With that, going into our next session, recession proofing, how to survive economic downturns. I want to welcome our host, Osmosi, the co-founder of AfroVibes.com, to the stage with James Francis, founder and CEO of Paradigm Asset Management, and Gary Stewart, managing director of Techstars. Can we give them a round of applause?
Okay, you hear me? Perfect. Okay, so this is called, my name is Omosei Iguodara, by the way. Thanks so much for the introduction. So this is called recession proofing. And so when we talk about recession, this year is a bit unique in itself because former years, the industries that have been hit by recessions are normally retail, travel, automotive, but we've seen tech companies definitely lay off thousands and thousands of employees like Google, Amazon, and so on and so forth. And so when we talk about recession proofing, these are the companies that people went into to safeguard their careers, and now these are the same companies that are laying people off. So if it's possible, how do you recession proof? I can go for either one of you all.
So first of all, thanks for being here. Congratulations to Kike and the team for this amazing event and success in general. So my name is Gary Stewart, and I'm the director of Techstars in New York City. I think to answer the question, it's really about kind of making sure that you know the value that you bring to the table, right? So I think that a long time ago, when I was teaching at a business school in Madrid, a professor said to me, you should always think about yourself as a product, right? And it's a product that's not working for any one company, even if it's your own startup. You're the product, and I guess you just have to think about it. Reid Hoffman talked about the startup of you, which is, how do you answer those typical questions that startups have to answer? Like, what is your differentiator? What is it that kind of is unique about you that allows you to be good at your job and to be able to make money? I think that, for me, recession or no recession, if you have really clear what your value add is and you're willing to work hard to realize that, then I think that you're generally recession proof. And even if it doesn't mean that you can't get fired or you can't your startup can't necessarily work, it just means that if you have that well defined, you probably can then find the next thing that's meant for you to be doing.
So it's mainly working on your skills, making sure it sets you apart.
Yeah, think of yourself as a startup. Think of yourself as kind of what's the product? What's my marketing strategy, which basically is networking, figuring out how you're going to use social media and those sorts of things. What's my product? What's my value add? How do I differentiate it from others? So if I send in my CV, why are they going to choose me as opposed to someone else? All of those sorts of questions that startups generally have to ask about their products, I think each of us should think about in relation to ourselves.
Nice. And I apologize, I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
No. So once again, I'm James Francis. I'm the president and CEO of Paradigm, which is a technology-based asset management firm, and also have a few other tech startups, and appreciate being here. In terms of the question around recession-proofing your career, I think that looking at your career like a startup, right? And I think most startups go through pivots. And I think one of the things that's most important is to think about, particularly in this environment, because there's a lot of change going on, that you need to be adaptable. You've got to have a future forward view and mindset. And I think it's critical to define that for yourself. What does that mean? How do you define that? How can you make that a living startup? So how are you doing continuous lifetime learning? What new enhanced skills are you creating for yourself that are relevant to the changes that are going on? And so you've got to go through kind of a process of assessing what the industry trends are that either you're in now or that you want to be in, and how do you assure that you are 2 or 3 steps ahead of the curve in terms of your skill development, in terms of your interpersonal skills. And I would also bring back that you've got to make sure that you're centered as a person, because that's going to help you become adaptable and resilient when the storms come, right? The more centered you are, the more balanced you are, the more clarity you'll have. And that will allow you to kind of work that plan. So it's definitely about enhancing your skills right now. And I'm sure we're going to dig a little deeper into that, and particularly how it relates to what we're looking at as this recession. But I think there's actually much bigger time bomb than this potential recession that's going on that we need to talk about.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm going to take you back. You mentioned we have to be 2 to 3 steps ahead. But look at the room. Historically, Black people, Black professionals have always been behind. And when we talked about, look at the numbers, like unemployment rates, we've always been behind, and wage gaps, we've always been behind. So we can talk about how we ourselves can, recession-proof our careers, but what about the leaders? How can they help address these issues of, within the workplace that can help us as Black professionals, be better?
I mean, I think the good and bad thing about getting older is that I think this is probably my 4th recession, right? I don't think I've ever had any issue in terms of being able to stay employed, start my own companies, raise funding, et cetera. I think that I don't depend, maybe this is part of the reason why I'm an entrepreneur, and I guess I didn't really introduce myself. So my background is, grew up in the Bronx, originally immigrant from Jamaica, went to Yale College, Yale Law School, practiced as a corporate lawyer for about 5 years, lived in Europe for about 22, and then helped launch a pre-seed fund that when I left, the value of the portfolio was $1.6 billion. And at Techstars, now what I'm doing is investing in early stage companies. Techstars has about 20 unicorns, about $25 billion is what our startups have raised. And JP Morgan has helped us to raise an $80 million fund to invest primarily in underrepresented founders with a focus on Black and Latino CEO-led companies. So I think that's kind of and so I think in all of that context, I think that what you normally see is that some of the best companies come out of recession, right? I think some of the best companies, what you see is they're the ones that know how to hustle and are lean. So I don't look to the leaders to solve our problems. I think the issue is that you have to solve your own problems. It's maybe the people in this room are fortunate enough that we have options to be at events like this, right? So we're not necessarily kind of, we don't have to kind of worry about it in that sense. But I guess my point would be don't really worry about what other people are doing. Don't really worry about what the leaders are doing. Focus on making sure that you know why you deserve to be in the room and believe that you deserve to be in the room. I never think about myself as oh, there's a recession, life sucks, or oh, I'm Black, life sucks. I just think about I'm awesome and I deserve to be in the room and I'm about to show all these people why I belong to be here.
Well said. Well said. Did you have anything?
I think he did that one.
Okay. So I guess with that being said, let's talk about you. You did mention that you were, formerly you were a VC-backed serial entrepreneur. Now you're an investor. So when we talk about all these layoffs, to some people in the room, maybe entrepreneurship is the way they want to go. What would you say to those people? What advice would you give, especially being an investor? What are some things investors are looking for when it comes to startups?
They're looking for, I also teach every other year at Yale Law School a class on entrepreneurship. And I had another lawyer come in and he was talking to the students who are just okay, how should I be thinking about my career? And he was you should think about 3 things. And hopefully they are aligned. What are you good at? What do you like to do? And what can you make money at? So if those 3 things are all aligned, then that's a kind of good situation. 2 of 3, it's pretty much okay. I think that to answer your question though specifically, what are investors looking for? They're looking for companies that are solving really big problems, right? And that there's a way to monetize that solution in a way that makes the investor really rich, right? So I think that when you think about it from the perspective of what we're doing in my program, there are a lot of problems in the world that maybe, minority folks have a particular ability to see into, right? So it may be things that are related to things that are happening to our communities. And as a matter of fact, like, Blacks and Latinos in particular in the United States are a very large group. Like, I think it's like 35 to 40% of the population. That's why the politicians and the corporates are now super interested in us. That's an opportunity, recession or no recession. So if you're an entrepreneur, like, the question you should be asking yourself is, what are the problems that I'm seeing and that my community is seeing? How can I solve this in a way that I can then monetize and make money for myself as well as make money for my investor?
Well said. And let's go back to you and James. You were talking about how to be 2 to 3 steps ahead, and I agree with you. So earlier we were talking. You and we had a discussion about AI, and that's actually one way people can hone in on their skills to be 2 to 3 steps ahead. What would you say about AI and how we can better prepare ourselves?
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, can I try to set what I think is the stage we're dealing with right now? So the session is recession-proofing your career. So I don't think we're in a recession. We might fall into a recession. It could be a deep recession. It could be a mild recession, right? You said you've gone through 3. If it comes, it's going to come and it's going to go, right? It could impact your career. I think that there's a bigger issue, and it relates to AI. I disagree that AI is not going to impact jobs. Let me give you a few. So I don't think, so the recession is going to come and go, but this AI wave ain't going away. IBM just announced 8,000 jobs are going to be replaced specifically by AI. That's on top of the 4,000 that they announced in January, so that's 12,000 jobs. Goldman Sachs predicts 300 million jobs will be impacted by AI. That means 18% of the entire global workforce. It's real. It happened because of what we are hearing about ChatGPT, but it's really about the T in GPT. Transformers have changed the game for everybody. So all of these things have just happened since November of 2022. So when you look at one of the things about technology, though, is we tend to overestimate the short-term impact, but we underestimate the long-term. So you hear, everything's going to take your job, and then it doesn't happen right away. But you look up 10 years later, and we've got computers in our hand, right? So when you look at the Dell made a prediction, Dell and the Institute of the Future of Work made a prediction in 2017 that 85% of the jobs by 2030 haven't been created. There's no title for them yet. Now, I would have predicted that would have been overstating the problem. But now, it might actually be understating. And I'll give you an example. In 2000, they proved that 60% of the jobs had not been in 2000, 60% of the titles had not been created by 1950. But everything's moved so much faster. LinkedIn, for jobs looking for generative AI, is up 36-fold already this year. So it is a change, but there's bad news and there's good news. As I mentioned, there's 85% of the jobs don't even have a title. So that means there's an opportunity to pivot right now.
Right.
I've got a list of names of jobs that 6 months ago, these jobs didn't exist. A AI ethicist, a AI personal designer, AI integration consultant, policy analyst,
So
AI education specialist, data steward. So the opportunity is to enhance your career, enhance your skills.
Exactly.
These are huge opportunities. Oh, the biggest one, prompt engineer, $300,000 job just to learn how to prompt AI.
So what you're saying is everyone should be skilled in AI.
Well, I'm saying 2 things. I think we need to first understand that it's real. Mm-hmm. And this has happened so fast. And it's not going to slow down. And you need to be paying attention. You cannot sleep on this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree with that generally. I mean, I think like the thing though is that like technology is not new, right? So I think like the way I think about it is at the end of the day, capitalism basically just wants to figure out the cheapest way to produce something so that the person who owns a company can get it as cheaply as possible. So slavery is really efficient, outsourcing is really efficient, AI is probably more efficient. But these are all the same things, right? How can I produce something as cheaply as possible? And usually human labor or human capital is the most expensive thing. So if I can decrease the cost of that, then I can make more money, right? And I think that you've seen this happen before with the internet. So like, again, I'm old enough to remember that, there was a moment where you would have to go to a travel agency to buy tickets, all of these sorts of things. And then all of a sudden the internet came and it completely changed the way that we did everything. And then all of a sudden these new jobs were created. I think that the same thing will happen with AI. It's just another new technology. What we need to do, though, is adapt, right? Probably like 100 years ago or whatever, or 200 years ago, people had jobs called horse and buggy rider. We don't have that anymore, right? So you just have to make sure that you're staying up to date with the current technology, but you don't necessarily have to be afraid of the technology. I think the only thing that's scary about AI is that it can think for itself, and then all of a sudden it might say, actually, I'm a lot more efficient than you are. I don't need you anymore. But, that's, I think, kind of like a long way off. For the immediate future, it's more like, just like people did with the internet, just like they did when we had cars and we didn't have horses anymore, people need to learn to adapt to the modern world. And you need to make sure that your skills are up to date.
But let me ask you a quick question about that, though. I think
we're running out of time.
Well, just one question. The difference that I see is that this is the first time that technology is really threatening knowledge-based jobs to the degree that it is, right? And so, historically it really impacted the middle in many ways, but now...
But there are more people in the middle than there are in the top. I mean, the only difference now is that people who consider themselves to be white-collar workers are at threat, but they didn't seem to have a problem when the blue-collar workers were being displaced. But there are probably more blue-collar workers than there are white-collar workers. So it is, it's not a bigger problem. It's just a problem that may be more personal to the people in this room.
Right. So
that's my point.
So thank you all so much. I will kind of wrap it up. So definitely be adaptable to the new tech in the industry. Definitely set yourself apart. And I like what you said. You said, don't wait for the leaders to make change. You do it yourself. So thank you so much. That was amazing. So now we're going to go to Q&A.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was done.
Hello? Can you hear me? All right, cool. I'll just ask the question. So, hello. Oh, it's working now. Cool. So I'm all about practical application when it comes to coming to these type of events. And so I wanted to know, maybe from James and Gary, what are some things that people can do today to take advantage of AI? Do you have any AI tools you're using on a day-to-day basis? Like, how can we actually do something about it and get ahead?
Well, I'll give you an example. Before I came here, I asked one of the people on my team, we're doing an event and we need some sponsors. So I was like, just draft me the proposal. And he sent it to me this morning. I was like, how'd you do it so quickly? It looks so great. He's like, I did it with ChatGPT. So I was like, I didn't even realize that you could do that. I'm like, you need to train me on this because I need to figure out what sorts of things I can do more quickly and more efficiently using technology. So I think those are the sorts of things as well. Figure out, at least in the short term, what are the sorts of things that you can do to be more efficient in your job, in your company, that maybe before it was a manual process, and now ChatGPT can do it really quickly and really well.
Yeah, it's an amazing efficiency tool. Writer's block, throw the ideas in there. Resume, job search, trends. You should definitely be using it for that purpose. Side hustle. There's so many opportunities to create job opportunities right now. I'll give you a case in point. I mentor a young man who has adult attention
ADHD?
Right. And I didn't realize this until we were talking. And he's been using, I told him about ChatGPT. So as he started using it, he's like, this has been a lifesaver for me because it makes his life so much more efficient. And then we talked about, well, why don't you create a business? Because there's probably so many people out there just like you. And he was able to create a business around it using the same, create a chatbot website, it's got clients, and is making money. So there's opportunities to make money and to use it for your own personal efficiencies.
Okay. And before you go again, how much time do we have?
We got like a minute.
Oh.
Last question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. So I guess, what strategies are you implementing to teach your teams AI? And quote, AI will take jobs, but AI will not take jobs, but by individuals who know how to work, AI will be at an advantage. So anything you're teaching your teams what to think about, what to do with leveraging AI?
I mean, I think it's not really a problem today. I mean, I think ChatGPT, I gave an example, but the other one I was going to give was, one of the things you can probably do is think about how to expand your network using technology as well. So, I mean, LinkedIn is obviously one tool, but I've seen some of my startups also basically use ChatGPT, and I don't know how to do it, to basically search the web to figure out who you should be talking to, right? Build up lists of people that you should be networking with. LinkedIn basically has research showing that the people who are going to be most susceptible to you will be people who went to your college, people who worked at the same places, or people that have some sort of affinity trade with you. They're about 30 to 40% more likely to respond to you than not. So I think that I would be thinking about how I can expand my network, because I think the one thing I really have learned, AI or no AI, is at the end of the day, it's all about who you know. I don't think AI is going to change that. Maybe it can just make it easier for you to figure out who you should know.
Yep. Well said. I think our time is up.
Yeah, so make sure you use ChatGPT, take advantage of AI. No, seriously. There's really a huge boom on the way, and so ride the wave. We got, tech stars. We got CEO of Paradigm, who loves AI. So definitely tap in with them for sure.
So thank you so much, James and Gary. Let's give them a hand.